Hi guys, it's me again. We're here to talk about writing. We talked about elements of a personal narrative a couple days ago. I want to go back to that text and talk for a few more minutes about that. I didn't want the lesson to get too long last time. Remember, we read a story called My Trip to Mexico City, and we talked about the elements that were in a personal narrative, things like feelings and thoughts. And we highlighted those things we highlighted those things yellow, what the author was telling us about her feelings and her thoughts. We also looked at dialogue. A personal narrative should include some dialogue. If your memory included other people, you talked to them. So your story should include that dialogue. In our story, My Trip to Mexico City, we highlighted that dialogue in purple. We also discussed that personal narrative has a clear setting, which is described in detail. We want your reader to be able to see what you saw, feel what you felt, and hear what you heard. So the setting we highlighted in blue. There was lots of descriptions. I'm going to go ahead and reread this text, and we're going to discuss a little bit of how the author included all of those things in the story. My Trip to Mexico City. Me encanta Mexico. Viajo allí todos los años. That's Spanish for I love Mexico. I travel there every year. This past summer, I went to Mexico City with my parents and brother to see my aunts, uncles, and cousins who live there. We go there almost every year for 2 weeks. When we got there, my tia, Gloria, picked us up from the airport. Mi amor, she exclaimed as she engulfed me in a bear hug. Spanish for my love, I believe. And this is how she feels, exclaimed. You obviously feel excited if that's how you're talking. As we got into her car, I took the surrounding sights in. Blue means the setting. I love the look of Mexico City. Many of the buildings are so old and full of history. From the car window, I could see the Merced Market, which was bustling with people selling fresh fruit, live chickens, tortillas, and charcoaled corn on the cob. It was making me hungry. That's a feeling. I can relate. I'm kind of hungry now, so I feel what she's feeling. We went back to my aunt's house, and she served us a big lunch. I love eating my aunt's cooking. It's delicious. Another thought or feeling that she included in her story. But when we come, she jokes that she has to tone down the spice, otherwise the food is too hot for us. We usually stay with my Aunt Tia Gloria the whole time we're in Mexico City. It's great because her son, my cousin, Diego, also lives there. That's how she feels. It's great. That we are best friends, so we always have lots to catch up on when we visit. I took some of my new video games along that I like to play. I got the PlayStation 4 this year, my cousin told me excitedly. Show me the games you have for it, I replied. I was excited to see if he had anything I hadn't played before. Dialogue. And this section we could have included as yellow because it's a feeling. He's excited, just as the author's excited. My other cousins came over the next day, and we went to a local soccer field to play a pickup game. I always have a hard time playing my best in Mexico City. That's because the city is situated at a really high altitude, at over 7,000 feet. It's much higher than Denver. It was hard to run at first because I got so out of breath. The second week, we did some sightseeing. My parents wanted us to see some of the popular cultural and historical sites. So we went to the Palacio Nacional, the National Palace. You notice how it uses Spanish, but it also immediately tells me what it means in English? I don't know if I'm saying this correctly in Spanish or not. Most likely not. But I understand it because of the reference that they gave me to the English. The Palacio de Bellas Artes, the Palace of Fine Art, and the Frida Kahlo Museum. Some of the visits were really interesting. My favorite part was seeing the murals painted by Diego Rivera. My mom loved the Frida Kahlo paintings the most. Which painting was your favorite? I asked her as we left the Frida Kahlo Museum. That's a hard choice, she replied. I found the self-portrait with Small Monkey to definitely be the most interesting one. This is dialogue, so it's been colored purple. On our last day, Tia Gloria had all of my aunts, uncles, and cousins over for a barbecue. One of my uncles played guitar and we sang songs together. It was kind of like karaoke. The grown-ups talked all night while us kids played games. When we woke up the next morning, it was time to drive to the airport. I felt a knot in my stomach as I thought about leaving. We tearfully said goodbye to our family before we boarded the plane to fly home. That's a feeling and a thought sentence here. She's telling what she feels when she leaves. Our trips to Mexico City are always too quick, and I'm always eager to go back again. Thinking back, this was probably my favorite trip so far because I secretly liked the Frida Kahlo Museum as much as my mom did. I believe that we could color this part yellow as well. As we're looking back, one thing I noticed was the dialogue was just enough. She didn't include everything everyone said because then it would go on and on forever. And let's face it, we don't need to know what everything was about. She just added in a sampling of dialogue to make it more interesting. Like at the barbecue, the people were probably talking about everything. We don't need all of that in our story to make it make sense. In fact, if we included all the dialogue, it would weigh it down. It would be heavy and no one would want to read it. So, since her topic seemed to revolve a bit around this art, she included the dialogue around that. And I liked that. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is this chart. Sorry. Elements of personal narrative. We want to look at how the author used these elements in this personal narrative. Now, one of the elements of personal narrative is the author is sharing a true story about something they experienced. How do we know? The author uses the words I and me a lot. This is a personal travel story written by a kid. So when you write your personal narrative, it's going to be in that first person point of view. You're going to say, I did this, or I did that. He went with me. So really, I kept calling the author a girl, but I really don't know if it was a girl or a boy because no one really said a name or gave any indication as to who I was. The second element of a personal narrative. The author's thoughts and feelings are a major part of the story. In this personal narrative, most of the story includes the author's thoughts and feelings. Those were the yellow parts that we pulled out. And we can include our thoughts and feelings by using the words exclaimed or shouted or cried or sobbed. Those kinds of descriptive words tell us how we're feeling instead of just saying, I feel sad or I was mad. You can include those feelings in other ways, in rich sentences. Does this personal narrative have a beginning, middle, and end? The author tells the beginning, middle, and end of their trip to Mexico City in sequential order. That means they told the story in a first, next, and last kind of order. So in this story, the author tells of their trip to Mexico City in sequential order. That's a fancy word for in order by time. So you don't want to tell a story where you start in the middle and then you go to the beginning and then you go to the end. People can't follow your story. They'll get kind of lost, confused, and stop reading. Personal narratives has dialogue, descriptions, and sensory details. Sensory means appeals to your senses, your smell, sight, taste, hearing. She made a reference to the spice in the food, the bustle and the noise. Those are sensory things that help your reader be interested in what you have to say. We colored those things in purple. So there is dialogue in the story. We colored it purple. And the author also describes the ants cooking and gives great facts about Mexico City. And I appreciated those facts because I've never been there. I don't know anything about Mexico City, so if she didn't tell me anything about it, I really wouldn't be able to understand her story. The other thing that a personal narrative includes is that it has a sequence of events that unfolds using transition words and phrases. So as you're telling your story, you want to use words like first we went here, or next this happened, after that, or finally. Those are transition words that help pull your reader along in the story so that you're not jumping around everywhere. The author uses transition words and phrases like when we got there means something's coming next. The next day, sorry with the quotation marks here. The second week, on our last day, and the next morning. Now each of these should have quotation marks around it, but I'm struggling with my fingers this morning. Those are transition phrases that help pull the reader through the story. The final thing that personal narrative needs to have is a clear setting that's described in detail. The author of this story describes Mexico City in the beginning, give a description in the beginning, and we highlighted this in blue. Now, the reason I'm discussing these colors is because each week as we're doing lessons, we're going to be highlighting things in the types of writing that we're using. You're going to look back into your personal narrative and you're going to check and see if you've included thought and feeling sentences. You're going to check and see if you included dialogue. You're going to color yours purple as well. It's going to help guide us as we write. We're going to be talking the next time that we visit about a topic you will write about. So when we visit again about writing, we're going to be discussing brainstorming and thinking of topics that we could write about. So I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. We're going to be discussing goals that you may have set for yourself at one time that you met. And we're going to brainstorm different ideas of things that we could write about. That'll be next time. See you later.